just the result of natural processes and climate patterns, or was it manipulated? The circular blue flashes seen in this video are frequency transmissions from the NEXRAD network of transmitter installations. All available science evidence makes clear that atmospheric frequency transmissions can and do have a repelling effect on air masses, especially if and when the air masses have been seeded with electrically conductive nanoparticles. The brighter the blue flash from a frequency transmission installation, the more pronounced and powerful the repelling effect on any air mass or storm in the vicinity will be. Where there are no blue flashes, there is no transmission, thus no repelling effect, thus no resistance for a migrating storm. Translation: a migrating storm will be hindered from moving toward frequency transmissions and will easily migrate in a direction with no transmissions. So again, I ask, was Hurricane Helene's path and behavior just an act of nature, or was it engineered?
Well, Dane, I am so glad you asked, because this is where years of my work that people have tried to get to you, that in fact you did not start acknowledging and calling microwave facility towers on Eglin Air Force Base until my work was presented to you. This is where my work comes in, and it's not about my work, it's about the details that my work entails, and what we capture, that it's not just, like you say, a repulsion from the microwave facility towers, aka Doppler radar. It's not just the repulsion and then the going into the non-energized areas that we are seeing, but more specifically and more liability inducing, we see feeding of the storms by the individual towers that are not doing the repelling, like you say, that are actually depleted of these energies, but have a beam coming out of them that steer the storms right into them. And so that is the triangulating factor that your work is missing, and I'm surprised that you have not taken your research further into the radar, but I'm glad you are at least discussing the radars. But it's not just a repulsion effect and lack of repulsion effect, it is a direct feeding, and that feeding is an ionization as it strips the electrons coming through and intensifies the storm on the back end, because further stripping of electrons creates further condensation nuclei for the storm. So it's an ionization that takes place and a feeding, and the Doppler's own literature says, do not point it in one direction too long as it will have environmental effects. And we know what these environmental effects. Couple that with the cloud seeding, with the balloons that are in the area of the severe weather events the day before, adding their particles. And then you have events like in Vietnam, when they weaponized weather and Congress didn't find out about it for 10 years, and they took out the Ho Chi Minh Trail with just a few cloud seeding projects. It is a whole toolkit of climate change tools, problem, reaction, solution. So thank you, Dane, for pointing out some of what the radars do, but we beg you to point out the rest of it, which is the triangulating effect, which is the liability. And I don't know why this work doesn't go viral, and other people's work does, but it's time. And human consciousness is starting to realize that Doppler radar is the missing factor, because it's not just HAARP that manages the ionosphere, but these radars manage the troposphere, feed the storms directly and through repulsion and through feeding. Thank you, Dane. Alright guys, I wanted to capture it going actually into the radar, not just approaching. Here it is. The center of the storm goes over the radar directly, because that's what's pulling it every time. You could see the indentation there, north-south, 12 and 6 o'clock. That's as close to a beam as we're going to get. That lines up with the midline of the polarities. Every time. And there she goes. All Right? See it? Poof. Perfect circle going over it. Now storm relative mean velocity. The red-green show, Leonard Coleman. Thank you for that. The white is at 12 and 6 o'clock. That is between the polarities, and it is lining up with the polarities of the storm, the midline of the polarities of the storm, which is the eye. That's where it pulls up the eye. That's how it controls it. This is Tesla technology, guys. Rumble.com/user/Nola Butterfly. Go down to my Clear Skies conference presentation for all the details. Okay, we're gonna catch Mississippi. Storm relative mean velocity. It's 12 and 6 o'clock. The white's getting ready to pick up what's being passed off, like the Harlem Globetrotters passing off the ball, twirling it on their fingers and passing it off. That's what it is. The blue is getting small, saying, come on in, come on in. All right? And then this is every time. Every storm, radar after radar. This is your climate change. And here it is in the Mississippi radar coming into it. Storm relative mean velocity. You have the alignment at 6 o'clock. And you can see the glitch, 12 to 6 o'clock. Not the glitch, but not the glitch at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, but at the blue goes real small. And then there's that indentation at 12 and 6 o'clock. That's the line that is connecting with the eye of the storm and pulling it in. That's 2 radars in a row. Gets connected to and goes right over the radar. Oof. Yeah, this is the missing VAX radar. For whatever reason, Tallahassee was pulling it, but then something else pulls it. I believe it's KVAX. But ultimately, the one they allowed it to take a direct hit was in South Carolina, past Atlanta, at GSP. GSP, there we go. This one, poof, takes direct hit. And what about the one that was south of that by Atlanta? Let's look at that one, see what we could see. It does go into it, but it has a pull that is more direct. So, you know, if you're playing tug of war with someone, they might move to the left, and then they'll move to the right when the person on the right pulls on them, right? So this was tug of war all the way.